I'm Mark Halperin.
I'm John Heilemann. And with all due respect to Chris Christie, TMI, dude. TMI.
I'm a Catholic, but I've used birth control. And not just the rhythm method, okay?
Happy National Chocolate Chip Day, sports fans. In our lineup tonight, Donald Trump, the event without Donald Trump, and then Donald Trump again. In an interview later in the show with me and Mark. But first, the big event with Donald Trump front and center. Thursday night's Fox News debate. Speaking of which, hey, where are the countdown clocks?
Boom!
Yeah,
Countdown clocks.
There we go. Turns out the polling criteria that Fox News used to determine which candidates will make the cut for prime time weren't all that controversial. With only a few tiny deviations, all the polls had the same top 10. John Kasich and Chris Christie brought up the rear, appearing to edge out Rick Perry. And, of course, the Donald tops every leaderboard in sight. Mark, how did we end up here?
Well, if you go back and look at the national polls before Fox announced the criteria of who got in, top 10 average of the final 5 polls, you'll see basically the same, almost the entire group. No one from the bottom. Carly Fiorina said she'd fight her way in. No one from the bottom fight their way in, with one exception. John Kasich went from basically 0 to 3, 4, or 5, depending on the poll, in a way that was quite strategic and tactical and smart, and he gets on the stage, which for him is a huge deal.
Well, and the big loser, apparently, what we think right now, Rick Perry, who did a lot of stuff to try to get himself in the national news in this period of time, from attacking Donald Trump in formal settings, cancer on conservatism, to making really kind of quite funny jokes about him at the Yale Club. He did all kinds of stuff to try to break through, and yet he kept slipping back and back.
And yet, I'll make this prediction again. The first forum at 5 o'clock with fewer candidates who will all get to talk more in a very substantive discussion that won't be dominated by Donald Trump are going to get a ton of coverage, and Rick Perry is going to be better off in that debate than he would be in the 8 o'clock debate.
I'll tell you, it's funny, though, all these people, that may turn out to be true, may not turn out to be true.
It will.
But I'll tell you, all the people who are with all these candidates who for the last few weeks have been saying, you know, we don't really care if we're on or we're not on, no big deal, well, it's going to work out just fine for us either way. The ones who were on the bubble who tipped over, the people around them are all going, whew, thank God we made that primetime debate.
Yeah, but it's true. But if you look at people like Carly Fiorina, Rick Santorum, the other people who are going to be in that, Rick Perry, these are people who are going to have George Pataki. They're going to have a serious, mature, adult, substantive conversation. That is a good place to be for those people, because that's where they think they can shine.
Except these people have a fundamental problem, which is that not that many people know who they are, and they are going to be playing to a considerably smaller crowd, I predict. It's not, I mean, I'll be interested to know what the ratings difference is, but I bet it's less than half.
As you know, a lot of the coverage of debates is not the live. It's what people hear about, and people are going to hear a lot about that contest.
No doubt about it.
All right. We've known for a while that Mr. Trump is at the top of the polling charts nationally, but now we're seeing his standing improve on some specific issues in some specific and important places. There's a new WMER University of New Hampshire poll of that key state's voters that shows Trump gets crazy high best in show marks on things like handling the economy, terrorism, health care, and, yes, immigration. His favorability ratings are also rising faster than you can say Make America Great Again. John, in all this great polling numbers for Mr. Trump, what's the best news?
Make America great again. Make America great again. Make America great again. Look, you would expect in some ways that Trump would be, given his business background, that the economy scores would be strong, right? The immigration score, whatever you think about his position on it as a matter of politics and substance, people know him for that. That he's doing so well on terrorism and on health care, where I don't think really almost anybody has any idea what his real positions are in those things. It just tells you what a freight train he is through this campaign. A lot of his personal magnetism and strength are carrying over across issues where he has no real position.
Those are important. Favorability, going from people looking very unfavorably to him to more unfavorably, is huge. The other one, which I didn't mention in the lead-in, is people thinking now that he's a strong general election candidate. In that New Hampshire poll, only Jeb Bush, and people thinking also that he's likely to be nominated. A big part of the hurdle he has is people thinking, well, he's not going to win in the end, or, oh, if we nominated him, he'd be weak against Hillary Clinton. Those numbers also, I think, hugely important for him as he tries to grow his support from the low 20s or so in our poll and others up to 30.
Right. The one thing that these numbers drive home, and it's something you and I have thought truly all along, which is not that he's going to be the nominee and not that he's going to be president, but that he's not a novelty candidate. That was the real worry for him, that he was going to be some kind of like, one of those, songs that that's like a summer jingle.
Just to be clear, I don't rule out what the things you just
No, all I'm saying is that you can have different views about those things. I'm not ruling anything in or out. I'm just saying the one thing we've said all along is this is not just a joke candidacy that's going to suddenly pop up and then go away.
Every other candidate in the field would kill for his poll numbers.
A funny thing happened at the forum, the candidate forum last night in Manchester, New Hampshire. The Republican hopefuls, Sans Trump, Mike Huckabee, and Jim Gilmore, entered stage right and exited stage left over and over as they answered questions from radio host Jack Heath at the Voters First Forum. One thing that we noticed, Republicans read Maureen Dowd. Who knew? Or at least they read her latest column on Joe Biden, actively weighing whether to launch a presidential bid.
I'd love to go against whether it's Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden. I'm a new, fresh face versus a name from the past.
I can't wait to get in the ring with her or Joe Biden, who's a fine man.
In order to beat Hillary Clinton or whoever their nominee turns out to be, we have to have a nominee on our side who is going to throw every punch.
Another thing that we noticed, when the candidates are not on stage, they do funny things. And those things are even funnier when we set them to music. One final thing that we noticed, and it was hard not to notice, Jeb Bush had trouble putting sentences together, even on what should be easy topics like his dad.
I differ than my sister greatly on politics. You have a brother who's pretty well known and a father who was president. Do you feel that when you're talking with voters you have to differentiate yourself philosophically from the former presidents?
No, people get this. I mean, just by your point. If you around a kitchen table, your sister doesn't agree with you on things, and so I have a different view than my brother. My dad is probably the most perfect man alive, so it's very hard for me to be critical of him. In fact, I got a T-shirt that says at the Jeb swag store that says, my dad's the greatest man alive. If you don't like it, I'll take you outside.
The Jeb swag store. All right, so that answer, just like a bad night or a sign of deeper troubles to come?
I have long said that his candidate skills are hugely underrated. Until he started running for president, I didn't realize just how good he was at some stuff. That answer was flabby, unfocused, on a topic he should be expecting. If he performs like that in these debates, he is going to really hurt his chances of winning, because that is not him at his best, and a lot of people are still getting to know him.
I continue to be baffled and amazed and kind of appalled by his inability to just nail down all of the ways he talks about his family. I mean, I've said it 100 times, but it is the topic that's going to come up a million times, and it's the elephant in the room. How can you not just have it all practiced and perfect by now?
He's different than his brother in a lot of ways, but I find them both to be self-conscious performers on uncomfortable topics in public in a way that his brother was often hurt by. But Jeb Bush doesn't have some of the things to offset that his brother does. He better not perform like that in the debates for his own sake. All right, coming up, please hold for Donald Trump. The Republican frontrunner telephones into the program after this word from our sponsors.
Our guest tonight is the real Donald Trump. Mr. Trump, thanks for joining us for a classic Trump phoner. I think you are aware that I was up in New Hampshire last week to conduct a focus group with some Republicans and independents who are either strong supporters of yours or leaning toward you. One of the things that a lot of those people said was, he's a billionaire, he's successful, we love that about him, but he's also one of us. One of us, a phrase that came up a lot. How do you explain that people who see you as so different from them can also see you as being one of them?
Well, I'll tell you, it's very interesting, and I did happen to watch that. It was such a nice, great group of people. But, they see the country like I do. It's run by incompetent people. We're being ripped off left and right by China, by everybody. I mean, it's not just China. It's everybody. I mean, we don't make good deals anymore, and they want to see it stop. From a political standpoint, we'll have better relationships with those countries than we do now. Now it's a one-way street out, and they all hate us. it'll change very dramatically.
Mr. Trump, also up in New Hampshire in a new poll, voters there, Republican voters, are rating you as the best to deal with the economy amongst the Republican field. Obviously, people know you're a successful businessman, but we want to talk a little bit about your views on things related to the economy. So I want to start with the Exim Bank. That's a big debate within the Republican Party now about whether it should still exist. What is your views of the pros and cons on the Exim Bank, and where do you come down on it in the end?
I don't like it because I don't think it's necessary. It's a one-way street also. It's a sort of a feather bedding for politicians and others and a few companies. And these are companies that can do very well without it. So I don't like it. I think it's a lot of excess baggage. I think it's unnecessary. And when you think about free enterprise, it's really not free enterprise. I'd be against it.
All right, sticking with this theme, Mr. Trump, I want to ask you a little bit about the Federal Reserve. You think back on all the Fed chairs of the past, who do you think has been the best?
Well, right now you have Janet is sort of more of the same, and I have to tell you, I often talk with two hats. For the last couple of months, I've been a politician. I've been in your world, and previous to that, I've been a business person. I've always loved low interest rates as a developer, and I've always done very well with low interest rates. And I think that, frankly, you look at what's going on now. The problem is, I think you're creating a bubble, and the bubble could explode. I liked Paul Volcker a lot. I thought he was a terrific guy in so many different ways, and he had a good pulse, and he had a good to me he was doing what had to be done. Right now we have the low rates. Again, from the standpoint of what I do in terms of real estate, if I want to develop, I'm building the old post office now. I'm just finishing up Trump National Doral in Miami. From that standpoint, I like low interest rates. From the country standpoint, I'm just not sure it's a very good thing because I really do believe we're creating a bubble.
You said you like Paul Volcker. Do you like the rule named after him as part of Dodd-Frank, the Volcker Rule?
Well, I'm not sure if he likes it, but if he's, honestly, Mark, if he's happy, I'm happy. He was a terrific guy. I've met him a few times, and I thought he was terrific. But I think his policy and his demeanor, there was something very solid about him. His demeanor were very good.
Let me ask you the same question John asked about Fed chairs, about Treasury secretaries. If you look across the history of the U.S., who's the Treasury secretary who you think was the best?
Well, I don't think I have an opinion on that. I think we've had some good ones, we've had some bad ones, but I really wouldn't have an opinion on that. I know they're talking about right now lots of beautiful pictures on beautiful bills, and we're going to see whether or not that works out. But I have no real opinion on that. I think actually Federal Reserve right now in this world, the way we built it up, and probably has more of an impact than almost any other position other than the couple of biggies.
Okay, you don't want to weigh in on any Treasury Secretary when you like. Let me just ask you about a recent one who some people like, some people don't. What do you think of Bob Rubin? Was he a good Treasury Secretary?
Well, I thought he was a smart guy, and he went, I think, with Citibank, and then Citibank crashed right after he went. So that sort of hurt his reputation as far as I'm concerned. But I think he was a smart guy. I think he worked hard at it. We were doing fairly well under him. He left, and the world cratered. So I don't know. Does he get some point deductions for that? Would have to take a look at it. Certainly, Citibank didn't do very well.
Mr. Trump, you said that you tweeted the other day something that suggested, at least, that some of your Republican rivals might be puppets for having gone to the Koch brothers retreat out in California. I want to ask you a policy question that kind of undergirds all of that, which is about Citizens United. Do you think that Supreme Court case was rightly or wrongly decided?
Well, they're very good friends of mine, and David Bossi's a terrific guy, and I know he fights very hard. I guess from my standpoint, personally, I'd almost rather not see it. You understand that, because I see all of the money that's being raised by these folks, and they're raising hundreds of millions of dollars and ultimately billions of dollars. And from my personal standpoint, because I don't need anybody's money, and I want to do it the old-fashioned way, and I don't like the fact that lots of people are getting into the act. So personally, I wouldn't like it. Overall, I'm not sure it's the worst thing in the world. I would like to see it a little bit differently, where it's not PACs, because these PACs are. It's a total phony deal. When Bush raises $100 and some odd million, and then he waits and waits and waits because you're not allowed to talk to the PAC and you're not allowed to tell him, and then the money is sitting in there, and then he puts his best friend in charge or somebody that's very close to him, and then they never talk. Well, if anybody believes that they never talk, it's a joke.
Right. So will campaign finance reform be an important part of your platform? And if so, what's the cornerstone of your idea about campaign finance reform?
Well, I think it could be. It wouldn't be number one. I mean, number one would be trade. Number one would be Obamacare, repealing and replacing, strengthening up the military, taking care of our vets. We have a lot of things. You know, we have things. We could talk all day long about things we have to do. But a campaign, finance reform, it certainly would be something that we could talk about, and I think more than anything else is transparency. I mean, there should be total transparency so that if somebody's going to do something, and I think one of the reasons I'm so high in the polls is because everyone knows that all of the lobbyists, many of which I employ and used to employ, and I know many of them, but they have tremendous power over, in fact, with the Kochs, I called it puppets, they have tremendous power over these candidates. And I'm not just talking about Koch, I'm talking about lobbyists, I'm talking about special interests, I'm talking about donors. And I was one of the big donors. I mean, I know the system better than probably almost anybody, almost as well as you guys would know the system. But you have tremendous power when you give money, especially when you give substantial money over the candidates. And a lot of times those candidates will do things, fellas, that are very bad for the country, but they're good for the company that the power group represents.
Mr. Trump, we're going to spend the last couple of minutes with you talking about stuff that's not really about politics, just a couple of questions so that we can help our viewers get to know you as a person a little better. One of my fundamental forks in the road of life is the question of whether you're a Beatles person or a Stones person. Are you a Beatles person or a Stones person?
I really like them both, but I guess I'll go with the Beatles.
All right.
Wise choice. I know you like to golf. I know you like to spend time with your family. What else do you like to do these days for fun?
Well, I guess a lot of fun is talking to you guys, but I don't have a lot of time left. I just got back from Scotland because I own Turnberry, one of the great resorts of the world, and we had the Women's British Open there, which is their biggest tournament, and I had to be there for 2 days. So I didn't even get to stay for the final day because I was actually anxious to get back on the so-called trail.
Are you saying that now, between your work, your business, campaigning, family, and golf, you don't have time for anything else fun?
I would say pretty much I'm maxed out.
Wow.
Wow.
There's no question about it. My life is an interesting life, but I would say I'm maxed out.
That does raise a question, though. You're very busy. We note that you tweet basically at all hours of the day and night. How many hours a night do you think you're getting in the sack at this point? How many hours are you sleeping every night?
Well, historically, John, I haven't needed too much, and I think that's a genetic thing, I suspect. Or maybe it's a thing where you love what you do. It's also that, because when, I know a lot of people, they can sleep all day because they're not happy and they don't like what they're doing. I love what I'm doing, whether it's my business or now what I'm doing now, because I think we want to really make America great again, and I love what I'm doing, and I guess I'm emboldened by the polls that are coming out because they're so strong.
Based on the tweets, it seems like you sleep 4 hours a night. Is that right?
I'd say that. I'd say 4.
Yeah. Do you ever nap?
No, I don't nap. I don't know.
Are you tired?
Again, Mark, no, I don't think so. I mean, if I am,
incredible benefit compared to some of the people you're running against. You're up 20 hours a day. That's pretty good.
Well, I always say to people, I have some friends that don't sleep very much, and I always say, assuming you don't need it, I always say to them that we have a big advantage because we have more hours in the day to work and compete. Yeah. So it is a definite advantage.
All right, Mr. Trump, I want to commend the idea to you of trying out the idea of power naps. I think those would be helpful. You get a lot out of those. Donald Trump, thank you for coming on the show. When we come back.
Thank you both very much. Thank you very much.
When we come back, the real Ann Seltzer, after this word from our sponsors.
So Mr. Trump said some pretty interesting things in that last segment. He called the Exim Bank excess baggage, said it's unnecessary. He voiced support for both Paul Volcker and the Volcker rule. And he said that low interest rates have created a bubble that could explode. All that and more written up on Bloomberg Politics right now, including his views on Citizens United, which he calls a totally phony deal. John, it's rare that he weighs in on substance and issues like that. What struck you? Is anything in there going to cause him problems?
Well, the main thing that struck me was that he seemed to really rise to it. He seemed to enjoy being asked those questions. You could hear him kind of like got warming to the questions. He also clearly hasn't been asked many of them before because he was kind of groping his way towards answers. And then finally, there were some internal contradictions in things that he said. Some acknowledged, like on Volcker, very famous for high interest rates, while Trump likes low interest rates. So, it's really fascinating. Some of them populist, anti-establishment that will help him. And I want to ask Ann about this. Do you think as he starts to take positions on issues of this kind, that will hurt his support or help his support, given what we know about his supporters?
Well, what I think has been the real question in the lead up to the polls that have just come out and the Fox debate is this guy for real? And I think listening to his answers to these questions, he's got stuff in his mind. It's not, maybe these were the first times he's been asked these questions, but he's got substance right there. You can think of other candidates who would fumble and really not have an answer or just pause for a very long time when asked about a Fed chairman, for example. They'd need to prep for it. And he's got so much that's been going on for so long that he's ready and he's not shy.
The senior aides to the other Republicans have gone from saying, oh, Trump's a fad, to being kind of in denial. Now they're all kind of like in Bush casting the Sundance Kid. Who is this guy? Like, he keeps coming at him. Are his supporters regular Republican voters based on what we know, or are they people he's bringing in new to the process who wouldn't otherwise be for any Republican?
Well, I don't know exactly who they are, but we know that new people are in fact coming in. We can infer that from our poll data, that we know that among the people who say this will be their first time participating in a Republican primary race, 30% say Trump is their first choice. That compares to 17 of experienced voters. So you know if his average is 21, that he's really being weighted by those new people, say, who'll be their first time.
And you reside in the great state of Iowa, a state that prides itself on being really up to speed and on presidential politics. People in New Hampshire feel the same way.
Yes, they do.
I'm curious about whether, in the numbers, whether we see a difference in terms of the support of these various Republicans between early states and the rest of the country.
You know, it's one of the questions I had when Fox first announced that they were going to use a national poll to decide in the very first debate, which is the action is in the early states. So would there be a difference between Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada, the Super Tuesday states? Well,
we've seen a lot of the candidates.
Seen a lot of the candidates. You might think that there would be an opportunity. We actually saw, and I think it's interesting, no real difference, no meaningful difference.
So the argument that this is rewarding people with national profile name recognition, it basically turns out not to be true. The top 10 nationally are roughly the same as the top 10 in the early states.
Exactly.
Yeah. Last question, because we got to go. We asked a question in our poll about what voters want in the debate. They want people to make nice to not hurt the eventual nominee, or do they want more interaction? What did we find?
Well, more said that they want them to make nice.
A lot more.
A lot more. Then said that they want them to engage. I think the trick will be for the candidates to execute on that, because if you make nice, how do you stand out? So we know you can stand out by not making nice, and there's a downside for that. But how do you stand out? You're going to take a very strong position in a very affirmative way to make a strong affirmative case. That's what I'm looking for in this debate.
And it bears repeating, people, as you've said all week, people know Trump well. They've known him for a long time. So a gaffe from Trump is not going to be a defining moment as much as it would be for someone who's more of a national blank slate, of Marco Rubio or Scott Walker. That gives Trump a greater margin of error in the debate.
I think that's exactly right. That's what he's enjoying right now.
Okay, Ann Seltzer, our pollster, visiting. Thank you. Ann's poll on BloombergPolitics.com right now, and we'll be right back after this.
You know who we got tomorrow, Mark?
Ed Gillespie.
Ed Gillespie, former Republican chairman, Virginia Senate candidate, and all-around Republican wise man. Can't wait for that.
Remember, we're on twice a day at 5 Eastern and at 8. Until tomorrow, we'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Sayonara.